Thank you, Mary. Hello, everyone. And as Mary said, I'm Clare MCGee, co-founder of AwakenHub. AwakenHub, our community, celebrates those females brave enough to take the plunge, sometimes to start their own business, to take risks, to scale their business, and other times to make that career pivot. I'm delighted this evening to welcome and facilitate the conversation with three trailblazing Irish female founders. Aveline O'Sullivan, co-founder of Bloom in a Box, Sarah Scullion, founder of Community Calling NI and Integra Bookings, and Sunnibha Corcoran, founder of SMC Food Safety Management Consultants. So we can all be in agreement that COVID has caused chaos worldwide for businesses. However, despite the doom and gloom of the crisis, there are many examples of how this has brought out the raw entrepreneur in some individuals and business owners, requiring them to pivot creatively and quickly, be that by finding new ways to stay in business, identifying new opportunities, or using the crisis to review their outlook in life and take the plunge with that burning idea and ambition. So first up, let me welcome Aveline O'Sullivan, co-founder of Bloom in a Box, who made a career pivot and changed her life from a top role in the telecoms industry to achieving her startup dream with Bloom in a Box. Aveline, if you'd like to share with the audience a bit about your background and entrepreneurial journey.
Hi Claire, thank you very much. Hello to everybody. I guess when you're in business on your own, not many people tell you you're thriving, but when I'm on AwakenHub, I must be doing something correct. So it's my little bit of acknowledgement to myself. I kind of did it differently. I have been in telecoms for 20 years. I was in the corporate world. I was access network manager with Air for just under 12 years. I had a consultancy firm with my husband. And I recently, in June of this year, left an acquisition director role in Cellnex, which is a European company, to jump into, which people can't believe, to sell a flower in a box. So you can imagine what people thought when I said, oh, I'm leaving COVID in the middle of COVID and I'm jumping out of this job. The truth was I was actually dying inside, and I didn't want to be one of those people that didn't want to fulfill what I really wanted to do. I'm not sure if my timing was right, but if I didn't do it, I think, and if COVID didn't happen, I'd be probably still sitting in the corporate job and may not be here talking to you tonight. I came up with the idea in 2015 because I had two flower shops with my sisters. So while I was in telecoms, I also owned two flower shops. I truly think to work in retail or to work as a waitress, everybody should do it because it really opens you up about customer care and people. So when I was in the flower shops, I was frustrated because I couldn't scale from Galway. I could only go so far with my two flower shops. So I took myself off to Holland. I came up with this design. I took myself to a designer who actually laughed at me. We got an Irish Design Award for it last Wednesday night, which is amazing news. And then I went for a patent in 2017 and I got the patent in May of this year. I soft launched it last year while I was full-time working. I was kind of testing it. You know, the truth is I was probably very fearful. I didn't jump to do it. I was in that stage of, I don't know if people out there understand, getting ready to be ready, always getting ready to be ready, but never actually doing it. So I decided one evening at 7 o'clock on a nice sunny day in May that I was leaving, and I handed in my notice at 7 o'clock the next morning. Decision is a wonderful thing. Decision just sets you free when you make a decision. It's when you're stuck between not making the decision that really can really tie you down. Thankfully, I've been out of my comfort zone every single day since I did this. I have never had an easy ride of it. COVID has taught me so much. It's probably taught me more in these couple of months than if I had launched last year fully. I don't regret a day of it, but I'm really happy to do it, and I can say that we're growing month on month. So yeah, that's my little bit of my background.
Great, thank you. And Aveline, just wanted to dig a bit deeper, you know, when you had said, you know, about deciding to pivot in the career change, you know, how did you decide that it was right for you, and that, you know, especially at this scary time?
Because I think I was saying earlier that I was always getting ready to be ready. You know, that kind of like, I'll do it when I do this, and I'll do it when I do this, and I need money for this, and I need money for that. And I was always, and that actually is fear. Okay, you need the money, don't get me wrong. And you shouldn't actually, I'm not telling everybody to jump out of their job straight away, because you do need to be at a certain stage in order to jump. But if you don't jump, then you're never going to know. And I suppose my driving force, Claire, was I kept waking up every day and going to bed every night going, I didn't do it. And there's something in me that wanted to be this person. And I didn't want to wake up one day and say, I didn't do it. I don't know what that is. But people always said to me, when I talked about telecoms, I just talked about telecoms. But when I talked about Blue in a Box, I lit up. They said my face lit up and I lit up. I don't actually consider myself a florist, even though I've had 2 flower shops. I say I'm a person who connects people. I say I make people feel good. I'm the person that owns a company that makes people feel good. But the truth is, I was getting in my own way. Nobody else. The idea was there, the pattern was there, everything was there, and it was me, and only me that was stopping me. And I was listening to my own BS, and everybody else was listening to my own BS. And then at one stage I went, oh my God, I can't listen to myself anymore, because I've now talked myself out of excuses. So my friend said to me, are you creating or are you disintegrating? I was like, I'm so disintegrating. I'm sucking the life out of myself in this job. And 7 o'clock, I took my husband for a walk. I said, I'm handing in my notice. And by 7 o'clock the next morning, I'd handed in my notice. And what I said was to my manager, my boss, I said, the CEO, I said, you need to tell everybody by 10 o'clock this morning, because if you don't tell them, I'm going to tell them, because I needed to make myself accountable that I was leaving. And then when I knew he had done it, but actually, it was incredibly scary. Every day is scary. There isn't a lie about that. But I felt only relief. I just felt relief. Yeah.
That's great. And thank you. We'll dig a bit deeper into the discussion and the panel questions in the second half. Thanks, Aveline. So next up, I'd like to welcome Sunnibha Corcoran, founder of SMC Food Management Consultant. Sunnibha works in food hygiene inspection services, audits and training. And in March 2020, due to the COVID, demand for her services took a hit, and Sunnibha had to adapt quickly to survive. Sunnibha can share now with you and give a brief bit of background into her journey. Sunnibha.
Hi guys, it's lovely to see you all, to meet you all this evening, and thanks guys for the opportunity to be able to speak and I don't know, hopefully offer you some insight. I always think my business or background isn't just as exciting as Aveline's, in that mine is, food science would have been my background. So I would have worked for about 7 years in a food and water testing laboratory. Part of that role then was I worked up to quality technical manager, and training would have been a big element of that. So in-house training. I suppose I always knew that training was something that I wanted to pursue. I remember one of the first jobs I had before even working in the lab was in a ready meals company, going in as QA. And I remember as part of the induction, they gave us on-site training. And I remember thinking, actually, that's what I want to do. And that sort of stuck with me. So a bit like Aveline, I was working at the time. I had just had my daughter in 2005. And like that, made the decision that I was going to make the jump and just try and not necessarily set up a business, but I wanted to work for myself. So that was sort of my ambition, was always just to be answerable to myself and to make a go of it. When I look back now, I don't know really how I did it. I think, God, what was I thinking? But that was 15 years ago now. So I'm operating since then. And so things are going great. So sorry, just to skip on, I was particularly on-site food safety training. So going on to premises would have been a main part of the business. And then in March, when COVID hit, I had a list of scheduled training courses to be run out over the next few months, and they all just disappeared, were cancelled or postponed, but they were gone for the present moment. So that was, I was bemused like everybody else. I said, okay, I'll just take the downtime, see what's going to happen. And then I realized, actually, there's no business here. I can't go on to premises. I can't deliver the training. So that's when it's, I suppose, forced me into making the jump, and not so much but just pivoting to be able to offer the different service. So I needed to retain the clients that I had made up over the last 15 years. So when they came, when they needed the training, I was able to say, I can now offer you the online training course, support it with the Zoom training and the Zoom follow-up and consultancy as well. And then I also had to realise that COVID was something that I was going to have to get, I suppose, have the knowledge for. So that was the other, I suppose, second part of the pivot, was really researching the COVID-19 regulations, the guidelines, the reopening protocols, and aligning myself. I was already a mentor with the Louth Enterprise Office, and that sort of facilitated me. I developed my own PowerPoint training presentation on COVID and the safety officers and that, and I was able to run that out then as well. So on reopening, I was able to offer the consultancy and that.
Right. And then many caution that in times of crisis, it's better to bootstrap. How have you financed the changes that you've made?
Yeah, so I suppose, again, I'm quite lucky in that from a business point of view, at the present moment when COVID hit, it was really just me being affected. I didn't have anybody else on my books as such. The online, I had done the research into providing the online platform, and the company then that I partnered with were able to offer like a credit facility, whereas the courses, you paid for the courses as you use them. So it was a bit of a leap of faith, but it was something that I knew I had to do. So it was taking the chance and saying, look, really, if I want to stay present, I have to be able to offer something online. I'm not saying that it's going to be, the main focus of the business ongoing, but it was something that I needed to do for now. So the credit facility for that allowed, as the courses then come in, you could pay for that then, and eventually a direct debit. So that took the pressure off, that it wasn't an immediate outlay.
Great. So a bit of a risk there. And
and the office that I'm in at the minute, actually, I had only just moved into a bigger office to facilitate smaller groups and online training. So I'm still in it, and I'm maintaining it. So I'm still here, but it's managing. I didn't have my own training facility as such. So.
Great. Thanks, Sunnibha. And we look forward to delving in more detail during the panel session in the second half. Thank you for sharing with us your journey. So next, and last but definitely not least, I'm pleased to welcome Sarah Scullion, founder of Integra Bookings and Community Calling NI. In January 2020, Sarah was a full-time startup getting ready to launch her first event tourism business in June 2020, but then in March, Sarah found herself having to reverse out of a COVID tailspin. And Sarah, if you'd like to share a bit of your background and your experience with the audience, please.
Yes, certainly. Hi, everyone. Thanks very much for the opportunity to speak today. I'm really excited about sharing my story. It's a bit of a different one, I guess. So at the beginning of this year, I was all set to launch Integra Bookings, which is an integrated booking system combining event tickets with automatic travel and accommodation options as search results. It was specifically designed for event tourism, for the likes of music festivals, international conferences and sporting events. So it had literally taken me years to get to even close to the point of launching that business. And there were several things holding me back. The first thing would have been confidence. From when I first started to think of the idea, I thought it was bigger than me. I thought that people wouldn't take me seriously. I had a background in the event tourism industry, but I wasn't a big player in the travel industry. I wasn't a software developer. So I had issues around confidence. And then secondly, I didn't feel like I was financially comfortable enough to make the jump from employment. I was trying for a family with my husband, and we've been trying for quite some time. So I was just waiting for that to happen and thinking, oh, I'll do it after. But years passed, and I eventually decided to register Integra in 2017. I had been waiting for a few years to have a baby, and I conceived the same week. So that threw a little curveball in as well. So in the end, I finally went fully self-employed after I came off maternity in May 2019. I secured funding for proof of concept, got a team of software developers, developed the software, proved the concept, everything was going great, then secured more funding, was all set to launch. I was speaking at the Institute of Directors Women's Leadership Conference on the 6th of March 2020. And by the 16th of March 2020, I had launched a completely different business and completely parked Integra. So it was a big, big shift for me. And the thing with the change was I knew Integra wasn't going anywhere, being specifically in event tourism. I knew I was going to have to just sit and wait around to see what was going to happen with the pandemic. And I had an idea of how I could support the community for a more immediate problem. So I bought a domain. I started building the website the same day. I launched it the same day, and it was up and running within 24 hours. So it was literally years to launch, which didn't even happen, to hours to launch. And I didn't expect that my prototype would work. Well, I thought it would test it. I thought it would prove the idea, but it actually solved the problem. So then it was just developing the prototype further. But the main difference was with that, there was no planning. There was no funding. There was no software developers. It's a completely different scenario. And what Community Calling is it's a digital support matching service, which was designed specifically to get the right support to the right people at the right time. So I've used enterprise software to solve that problem and brought that into the third sector. So it's something completely different, and actually it's given me a lot of confidence then to realize that, you know, I can do things myself. I don't always need to take it to a software developer. There's so much you can do at an early stage. So I've learned a lot from both experiences, and I wouldn't be where I am with Community Calling had I not had all the experience with Integra, I guess. So, yeah.
Sarah, that's a fantastic story, just showing how, you know, you've paused your startup for now, but you've taken those skills and used it for some good in the community, and hopefully that will be sustainable in the future. Just kind of off the ball question, you know, by nature, are you a planner or a risk taker?
Well, like in hindsight, I always would see myself as a risk taker, like just in general. Like I love adrenaline sports, bungee jumps, skydives, all these sort of things. But when I look at what I had done in the past with Integra, I was all planning for years of planning. Like I'm talking, I started this in 2012 and I wasn't meant to be launching then until 2020. So it's a very long time. And I realized then it's better to take calculated risks and get things out there to prove your idea and your concept at an early stage rather than waste so many years planning. So, yeah.
Great, Sarah. And again, looking forward to discussing with yourself, Aveline and Sunnibha in the second half. And now it's time to move into the breakout rooms. So welcome back, everyone, to the second half of the session. And just want to check with our panelists. Sorry, can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah.
Sunnibha, Aveline and Sarah, that you're all unmuted. Say a quick hello.
Hello.
Hello. So so start off with just by, networks are incredible. As we know in AwakenHub, networks are an incredible and powerful business tool. Yeah. So I'll pose this first question to Aveline and then ask Sunnibha and Sarah to come in. You know, were you able to use your network to leverage success for the pivot that you made?
There is no doubt that I would be here without my network. I think that every decision I ever made and everything I ever did, from everything, I called somebody from many of the networks that I have, from Acorns and Power, Awaken. I call out to all the women and men as well. Like, I just think it's a phenomenal thing to have networks, because there's no way I would be here without my network. Yeah, and it's a lonely space, and you need people. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would echo what Aveline said. I find and that is something that I've learned. That wasn't something that I was open to at the very start. That was learning to trust networks and to put yourself into them, and to trust that. I find they're very reassuring. I found that when I went to networking, it more confirmed to me that I was doing things right, or that I was on the right track, and that any concerns or issues that I had, everybody else was feeling it. And then from a business point of view, that there was always somebody that had a connection or that had the advice or could point you in the right direction. You needed that support. So yeah, I definitely found the networking groups were great.
And Sarah, in terms of the transition, you know, you have a wide network, and it would be startup and business development. How did you find that transition to social enterprise and the community network, and building that community in such a short space of time?
I find that the network I had in the startup community actually helped to start building my network in the voluntary community and social enterprise sector, because I was able to get a lot of introductions to people to speak to. And throughout that, I'm still a startup as well. So I was getting the startup support. I was really lucky to be on a pre-accelerator program called Propel with Ignite from January to June of this year. So they were incredibly supportive of my pivot or jump or whatever you want to call it, what I did. And basically, I couldn't have done what I did without that support. I think it gave me the confidence and reassurance to just do it and not overthink it and just go for it. So then that led to the right introductions to start building my network in the voluntary community and social enterprise sector. So definitely networks are, I couldn't have done it without building the right connections with people.
Thank you. And then just posing the question to the panel, what conditions do you think are needed to be true to pivot? You know, what conditions do you need in order to pivot? I'll post that to Sunnibha then.
Yeah, I suppose, so maybe I might be a little bit different to the two girls in that I had my own business was running longer as such. You know, I'm like longer as SMC, I don't know how, but 15 years, wherever that 15 years went, or I'm certainly not a millionaire yet, but 15 years I've been working at it. So for me, I think what I learned was in my pivot was that I had a much sounder client base than I actually realized. And that the thinking of needing new clients and moving in different directions, that I actually could pivot the business for the clients that I had. And I think that was important, and it was maybe important from them, if I can say it that way, that they had confidence in me. So they were willing to come back to work with me. I mean, everybody was going through that, I suppose, that unknown time. So for them to have familiarity with the business and have confidence that if I was going to be offering them something, that they knew they could trust me on it. So like overall, we were in it together. Does that make sense?
So how did they react to the change? You know, considering that a lot of your work is one-to-one and face-to-face and very personal, and it's a big kind of culture shock, especially for the industry that you're in, that they would be moving to online. How did your clients react, and how did you balance that with your new service delivery?
I suppose very much trying to keep the face-to-face contact. So I'm able to offer the online courses where they can log in and do them themselves, but I felt it was very important to keep the consultancy and the support side of it, so they didn't feel they were just going off and doing an online course that that they could do with anybody. It was still very much an SMC course. It was going to be followed up with phone calls, with questions, with an on-site visit as the time arose to follow up on the training. And that gave them confidence, and they knew that the follow-up was there. They weren't at any point gone off on their own. There would have been trepidation at the start when you mentioned Zoom calls, but I think everybody was going, oh no, I've heard of them, oh, how do we do it? But once we did it a couple of times, they were quite happy to it, and I think everybody has responded very well. That's the climate as well. It's definitely,
it's kind of like a needs must.
Yes, yeah, because I definitely, like, people might say, how come you weren't able to offer online before this? There wasn't a need. The clients that I was working with were quite happy with online on-site training, as still a lot of people are, but they were forced to pivot with me.
Great.
I suppose as
And
well,
we'll just bring Aveline in there. Aveline, in terms of the conditions that you feel that we need to pivot.
I think Aveline's muted.
I
don't think she can take it off.
Let me see. Well, Sarah, in the interim, did we get Aveline unmuted? Have you any comments on that?
Yeah, just in general, I think if there's a relevant problem to solve, whether you're pivoting within your existing business or from employment to self-employed, or whether you're completely changing your startup, it's solving a problem, an immediate problem that it's not just a problem for yourself, it's a problem that is real for other people. And I think if there's that need there, then there's it's viable to pivot then. I think that's just the first question, really.
Great, thank you. And just kind of on, Sarah, when I have you there, would you have one piece of essential advice for making a successful pivot, either in your career or business?
Yeah, I would say when you have an idea or you have any assumptions, I would say to test them as early as possible. Even if it's a really simple test and it might not go anywhere, like someone filling in a form or doing something to validate your idea, I think get it out there and do that early, because there's no point in planning something that may well change and it's a waste of time. So I think test early and adapt to the response from the market that you're targeting.
Okay, and Aveline, now that you're unmuted, if I bring you in, would you have a piece of essential advice for making a successful pivot in your career, in your instance?
Yeah, I think you have to believe in yourself as well. I think there has to be a lot of belief, but I think that, I do believe that you have to test. You do have to test everything. I mean, some people get very overcomplicated with their tests. I mean, I tested my things hanging in wooden spoons over bowls around my house. You can start off with very basic tests to get you places. You don't need to be pulling in a lot of money. I mean, I had no money when I started off, so I had to nearly make up the tests and do everything. And actually, there's a great learning in that. But definitely, yeah, test. I think you have to have a lot of courage to pivot. And I think sometimes, the expression flogging a dead horse. If there's something in your business that's not working, you keep going back and you keep doing the same thing and you keep getting the same results, you're wasting your time. And sometimes that is the hardest thing, because you think that this is the way and you've it all planned that this is the way, and yet you're not getting the results. Then you have to at some stage go, I need to give that up, and I need to and sometimes letting that go is really hard. Letting that go of what you thought was going to work is really hard, but the minute you let it go and then you pivot, then you do start moving forward and then you change. I would think that that's a really important one, is letting go what doesn't serve you or the business is really important.
Thank you. And Aveline, just, what have you learned from your experience, and has this experience changed you as a person?
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, I'm constantly out of my comfort zone. I mean, it's just been, like a tsunami some days, and then other days I'm on a high. I'm so high, I go from up and down, and I love that, because I'm that person that enjoys that kind of up and down. There's days I wish it was a little bit calmer. I actually think that we should be a bit kinder on ourselves. I think there's a lot going on at the moment, and what we don't do? We don't take the wins. And there's a lot of wins that we should be taking and we don't take them. And every now and again, it's okay to sit down and go, Jesus, I did that. It's important. Sometimes I don't do it as much as I should do it. And I think we should be a little less judgmental about ourselves as well. And yeah, and also that it takes longer than you think. That would be my one bit of advice. So, I started off thinking, sure, I'd have, all this done in no time and sure I'm going to take off. That is so not true. There's no such thing as an overnight success. These things take time, and they take hard work, and they take belief, and they take getting yourself up every day and zipping up that suit and sucking it all up. And even though you might be hit over the head with negative comments and lots of different things, you just have to keep going. You have to, persistence really is what it is. It's persistence.
It's key.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. And Sarah, if I can just bring you in on that question in terms of, what have you learned from the experience, and has it changed you as a person?
Yeah, I think it's really pushed me out of my comfort zone. I guess, it's going back to the question you had earlier, I'm a planner, I'm a risk taker, and I thought I was a risk taker, but it turned out I was a bit of a planner, and I didn't have a plan in March, and I kind of just planned as I went along. So I realized that I need to be a bit more flexible and agile with my plan, and I think it's hard to come up with a full business plan for a startup because you don't know what's going to happen. I think it's more about the learnings that you can have from speaking to your market and, getting out there and testing your ideas. So I think it's just given me the confidence to do that and speak to people and do events like this and different things that really I have a lot of anxiety around. But when you challenge yourself and push yourself out of your comfort zone, you actually find it's not as bad as what you think it's going to be. So I think it's a mixture of just my approach and also my confidence. I think it's been a big change.
Thank you. And then Sunnibha, in a sense that, Sarah and Aveline are in the startup kind of phase of their businesses, and you coming from, kind of 15 years experience, they've been talking about courage, confidence and pushing out of their comfort zone. In your opinion, is that the same for you? The same experience for you, or is it different whenever you're in business? No, is it a different process?
Yeah, no, it's funny. I think whether it's a female thing, we all seem to struggle with that self-confidence or affirmation. So you're doing it, but it's very much nervously, or I think you have to trust your gut. I don't think that ever really puts you wrong, that if you want to do something, what's the worst that can happen? And I think that's definitely something that we've learned from this pandemic, is sort of the worst, something that we thought would never happen is happening, and we're all coming through it. And it's, that you've learned to adapt and to go on. I would think I would be a positive person, so I would tend to think, in one hand, what's the worst that could happen, and yet I would be very anxious as well. I've been doing the food safety training courses, like as you say, for 15 years, and I still get so nervous before I start presenting the training. So that's something that doesn't go away, but that's what makes it real, and that's because you care. People say that, well, you've done the course so many times, but that's not it. It has to be right for me every time, and I don't think you lose that, and that's where you're passionate about what you're offering people and your business. So I think really trusting yourself and going for it, and it doesn't get any easier.
Thank you, Sunnibha. And just a question, and I'll open it up to the whole panel if someone wants to jump in. Have any of you put any metrics in place to measure your pivot, or did you just go for it?
Just went for it. I wish I had metrics. I haven't had the time to put in metrics, and I keep saying I will. No, I just, in my situation was a little bit different. If I didn't jump, I probably never would have jumped, because I was, I just needed to go for it, and that's what I did. Yeah.
Okay, and can I ask then, are you a risk taker or a planner by nature?
I'm a risk taker, definitely, but the more I get into it, I would be bringing a little bit more planning into it as well. So I'm not completely a risk taker. I would like to say that I am, but there is a certain part of me, this is real money now, that I have to plan. And I'm getting better at that, and I'm getting better at strategy, and I'm getting better at planning, because I need to do it, because it's all in my head and I need to take it out. But I'm probably more of a risk taker, but there's definitely more of a planner coming into me. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And that kind of brings us near the end now of the panel discussion, but we will have an opportunity for all your questions to go to the panel when we return after the next breakout room. And just in terms of, great teams are from people that have different skills in terms of risk taking and planners. And in our AwakenHub team, we have a good mix of planners and risk takers. Isn't that right, Mary MCKenna? Without further ado, we're going to go in for a second breakout session, and it's going to last for 10 minutes this time, and we'll come back out for final round robin questions with the panelists, so feel free to put those on the chat, and remember your AwakenHub or etiquette when we go into the breakout rooms. Look forward to seeing you get back in 10 minutes. Okay, thank you.
Hi, welcome back everybody. While we're waiting for everyone to join us, I'm just going to read out some famous pivots that I wrote down earlier, just because some of them are amazing. So, did you all know that Slack started out as a video game? Twitter started out as a podcasting platform. Flickr started out as a digital role-playing game. Instagram was a check-in app. YouTube was a video dating site. And Netflix was mail order DVDs. So that's why it's a good idea to sometimes pivot away from what you start and do something different. So I have the audience questions. Thank you everyone for submitting your questions during the Eventbrite process. I know it's a bit annoying, but it's a great way for us to capture some of your questions early doors. And I am going to try and do a little quick fire for 7 minutes or something here with everybody. So I'm going to start with you, Aveline. So please, speakers, unmute yourselves, and we'll just do quickly on this. Did you do any customer and audience research before you decided to pivot?
Yeah, I did. I soft launched last year, so I knew I had customers. Yeah.
And Sarah, did you?
I was testing at the stage when it actually launched. I didn't mean to launch so early, so the test kind of just naturally became the business. So that was my market testing and trying to check out things with customers was kind of as it was starting. Really, it was quite quick.
Sunnibha, I really like what you said about forcing your customers to pivot with you. That's priceless. So did you do any customer and audience research before making your decision?
Probably not, as in specifically sending out, a survey or, asking them, would you be interested in online? Again, it was something that was in the pipeline. It was something that would have come up over time, as to whether they would have been interested in it. So I suppose I knew that they were going to have to jump to a certain extent, not all of them, but enough of them that I would be able to offer it. So kind of yes and no, I sort of, yeah.
And I'm going to ask you this question, but I don't think there's an easy answer to it. I don't really know the answer to it. So, none of us are going to judge you on what you say here, but maybe start with you, Sarah. What would you say to an investor who complains that you've already pivoted too often?
I'm not really sure. I think it depends on what you're doing, and it depends on what problems you're trying to solve, because I think to stay on one road and not pivot much could affect your business if you're not responding to your market. So I think it just depends on the circumstances, I guess. I think if you're pivoting too much without valid reason to, then yeah, okay. But if you've got valid reason to pivot, there's a problem that needs solved and you can solve it and it makes business sense, then I don't know if you can do it too much. I'm not sure.
Sunnibha?
Yeah, I suppose I just think it's important, again, because I've had my client base or sort of set up. If I was pivoting, I think it's important that either I am still continuing to offer them the service that they wanted, so that you can pivot and offer a new service, but that doesn't mean that you are sort of dropping the other service if they want it, and I suppose an investor or, could find that you're only getting something set up and then you're pivoting and doing something else, which shows that, a lack of commitment or a lack of following through on a particular idea or a particular element of it. So I think you can pivot as long as you are committed to it and committed to what you have previously done, unless it definitely wasn't working and you're able to, to justify it. But I think you have to be true and able to show that you're pivoting for the right reasons, that it's for yourself and it's for your clients. It has to make sense.
Anything to add, Aveline?
No, I would agree. I think if you're pivoting too much, I think that it's kind of like, where are you going and what are you doing, you know? And I think that even your customer, never mind your investor, your customer might be going, who is she and what's she doing? And we're all a bit confused. But if you're pivoting, because maybe you pivot and it's like add-on products and stuff like that, and there's extra revenue coming out of them, well, then that's a good idea. But I do think that, you know, your purpose and your mission and where you're going should be somewhat the same. Like, you know, don't be all over the place. I mean, I would question that, but I mean, at times we have to pivot. But if you can show the results of pivoting, well, then obviously that's much better. But if you're not showing results from pivoting, that's a problem.
I have one last question for all of you, and then I'm going to pass back to Mary to close off for the evening here. So my last question, I'll start with you, Sarah, I think. So I know it's early days with your new business direction, but are you happy with your outcome?
I am, definitely. I think it's been extremely rewarding, the change of direction that I've taken over the last sort of 8-9 months or so. It's something that I wasn't expecting, but I definitely think that I am pleased that I made the choice to do that. I haven't given up on the other idea with Integra, but I think there will be a time and place for that to happen. It's just not the time. So I don't have any regrets around it.
There's a part 2 to my question. Is there anything that the now 64 of us that are on this call can do to help you going forward? What do you need?
Yes, any introductions to anybody working in the voluntary community and social enterprise sector would be amazing, because we're trying to build our network of organisations now on top of our network of volunteers, because we've proved our concept on a granular level with peer-to-peer support, and now we're actually trying to match more people to organisations who can provide the support they need. So the more connections we have, the better across the whole island of Ireland. So any intros would be amazing.
Okay, Aveline, same question for you. Are you happy with how things are going, and what can we do to help you?
I'm really happy personally that I did it, because I feel more alive. That's in my own life. I'm really happy that I did it professionally. I'm the type of person that always, though, you know, is always pushing myself harder to reach more. But I am really happy the way it's going. I'm at a stage at the moment, if anybody, I would love help. If anybody could help me maybe with channel partners or with possibly distribution, or if anybody knows a florist that would like to come in and help me, because I'm getting to that stage now where I need help. So the question is, do I expand here? Do I take on a florist that can help me fulfill these? I would love that kind of help. I'm in a distribution / channel partner kind of situation, and I would love help with that, or any kind of connection that could help me would be fantastic.
And related to a conversation that we had a couple of weeks ago, I mean, you are looking to expand to the UK, aren't you? So maybe anybody that's on the call that could help with any UK connections for you might be useful.
Yeah, because I'm shipping into the UK from Ireland, but ultimately I want to be in the UK, fulfilling from the UK, because it works. So yeah, it's fantastic. Thanks, Mary, for reminding me. Yeah. And
lastly, to you, Sunnibha, are you happy with how it's going, and what can we do to help you?
Yeah, I'm very happy. I am definitely very positive about the future. It's definitely opened up different avenues. It's opened up to different businesses, different clients. It's definitely, I feel much calmer about it, funny. I'm not sure why, but I am calm, and I'm quite confident about the direction that the business is going and being able to offer it. So I would definitely, if for any of anybody from in the hospitality or the food sector, it'd be food safety. I suppose in terms of pivoting, I've pivoted for the online, but I've never pivoted from food safety, and I think that has stood to me as well. What we were saying, you know, you don't have to be doing 10 things. You can be the person, people know you for one thing, then they know who to go to just for that. And that's important, and that has stood to me over my 15 years. So anybody in the food industry, that needs help from a training point of view, consultancy, yeah, reopening again, but most places would be set up for that. But anything,
Just
I'd be happy.
looking at the clock, Sunnibha, and I am going to stop you there because there's a few people on this call that if I let it run over, they'll have the guts for answers. So thank you all for joining us. Mary Carty, last word to you for the evening.
Right, well, I'm inspired and excited about the future, and you know, who knew that COVID could unleash such creativity, independence and resilience? That's pretty incredible. And one other thing, we hit 1,000 followers, so thank you everyone. That's our goal hit for tonight. Okay, thank you all for coming. We are just so delighted that you were all here with us tonight, and mark your calendars. We're going to have a little festive cheer on December the 15th. We'll hit you all with details later. And thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you all.